Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today I'm going to be sharing a video of a craft that I did a few weeks ago on a fringing paper video, and I asked if anybody wanted to see it, and I got a few yeses, so I figured I would take the time today to demonstrate how I made these little fringed flower buds. Once again, I am using 3/8 inch wide quilling paper. I have white, pale yellow, and a deep yellow. And then I also have this really pretty bright kind of spring green. This is thinner. This is a 1/8 inch paper. And I have the rest of my tools here. Ugh. There we go. I have a small pair of scissors. That's how I'm going to do my fringe for this video. I also have something to roll my quilling paper with. Savvy slotted tool. I have a small needle nose container filled with Elmer's glue all. A thin paint brush. I'm also going to be using some Aleene's tacky glue, and then I do have a wax covered cork board just to build my flower on later, and then a damp paper towel to wipe my fingers off if they get a little gluey. Now, first thing we're going to do is organize myself. There we go. And I'm using 3 different papers for these flower buds. You don't have to. You can make them 2, you can make them 1, you can make them 8, whatever colors you wish. This is your decision, but I'm using 3 different colors to make sort of an ombre effect to my flowers as they're opening up from their little blossom. So as you can see here, I am fringing my paper in very, very thin strips with my scissors. If you have one of those fringing machines, that will work just fine. If you watch my fringing video, you will see my thoughts on that machine and my trouble that I had, but that's my personal preference. So here we go with the white. I just did about 1.5 inches of the fringe, and now I'm going to move on to the pale yellow, and I'm going to do the same thing. Very thin fringe. Careful not to get it all the way through the paper. If you do, it is not a problem on this craft. I will show you how to fix that later on. So if you find yourself snipping all the way through your paper every once in a while, you know, you're welcome to scratch that and start over. Luckily, quilling paper is so inexpensive, it's not a big deal if you mess up 1 inch or so. But if you really want to salvage it, like I said, I'll show you how to do that later. So there we go. I have a little bit of the pale yellow, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the deep yellow. But we'll just skip that part for now because I think you get the picture. So here we go. I have 3 different colors, a little bit of the white, a little bit more of the pale yellow, and a little bit more still of the deep yellow. I'm not going to give you any measurements on this because we're going to make a bunch of different flowers in a bunch of different sizes. So you'll see how big these are at the end. So you can see there in the middle of that yellow piece, it's almost to the end. I'm just going to tear that so that I can show you how to fix it. What we're doing is just gluing these strips end to end. You saw me glue the white with the pale yellow. So now I'm just going to add a little bit of glue and glue those 2 pale yellow strips together. It's okay if they overlap slightly because we're going to roll this all up and you're not even going to notice. So like I said, do not fret if you accidentally snip your paper all the way through. Going to glue on our last piece there. If you're doing just a 1 color flower, you can skip this part because you don't have any separate colors to glue to each other. There's my strip. That's about 8 inches end to end. We're going to be starting at the white side, and we're just going to roll this up just like any other quilling strip. I'm starting with the white side because I want my white to be in the center of my flower. If you wanted a different look, you would roll that accordingly to how you wanted your finished flower to look. I like the Savvy slotted tool for this process because the working end, the slot, it's very, very narrow. And it also, I can just grip the very edge of the paper where it's not fringed and roll it up very gently, and it doesn't damage the rest of my paper, the fringed part. So I'm going to leave it on the tool, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to the end and press that to set. And that's pretty much it for the fringed flower bud. We're going to add the stem also in a bit with that green paper, but that's pretty much that. I do have a longer strip here that I'm going to roll because I want, like I said, I'm going to make more than one flower. So this one's going to be a little bit bigger. You can make these as large as you wish. You know, keep going to whatever size you're looking for. These both, when they're done, they're going to be about 3/4 of an inch. This one's going to be just a little bit bigger, but later on I'm going to fan it out to make it look even more of a large flower. So roll that end to end. Again, we're leaving it on the tool and we're applying a little bit of glue. And close that up. And that's our second flower already. Now we are going to move on to making the stems for our flowers, and we're also going to be making the little cups that connect the flower to the stem. So it's what the flower is going to be blooming out of. Yeah, I'm sure there's a real name for that, but I don't know what it is right now. So to do the stems, we're going to be making double thick pieces of quilling paper, and I've done this many, many times, and I have a whole video on how I do it at length. I'll link to that in the description box for this video. But short version is I take a long strip of quilling paper, this one is about 22 inches, and I fold it in half. And then I apply a thin layer of glue over the entire side of one of the halves. You don't need a lot of glue, but you do need glue on every little millimeter of it. You don't want to leave any gaps. And then I take my folded paper and I have the folded end in one hand, and I kind of zipper it through 3 fingers on my other hand to seal it back up again. And that pushes the glue all the way from end to end and make sure there's no air bubbles and make sure it's very straight. And by the time it dries, this will be a very sturdy piece of quilling paper that you can make a stem. You can use this for on-edge quilling. For these, because the flower bud is pretty heavy, you could even do that again once it dries, fold it again, double it up, do the same process to make a 4-layer quilling paper. That'll really give this a nice strong stem. Totally up to you. I just did 2 for mine, but I wanted to put it out there. If you find that your 2 are not sturdy enough, do it again and you'll get a really nice sturdy stem. Now we're going to take another strip of that same green paper. This one is just a single strip. It's not doubled up. It's not glued or anything. And we're just going to, without measuring, roll it on our slotted tool. And what we're trying to do is make it so that it's slightly bigger than our rolled fringed flower buds. And like I said, we're not measuring this. I'm not worrying about trying to figure out the exact diameter or anything because I'm going to hold it up against one of my flower buds like that, just to see. You can get a pretty good idea. That is not bigger. Obviously, you do need to roll that one a little bit more. Roll it a little bit more, and then I'm going to try again. That looks a little bit bigger there. So at that point, I'm going to give myself a little bit more room because that one was real close. There we go. You can see that now the green is definitely bigger than the fringed piece. So now I'm definitely going to rip off my extra and take it off the tool. I'm not going to let this go because I want this to be a tight coil. Add a little bit of glue to the end and press that to seal. If you're making really large flower buds and you find that one strip is not big enough, add on a second piece and keep rolling. You can glue that to make these tight coils as large as you want them to be. They don't have to be just a single strip if you're making really big flower buds. There you go, definitely bigger than the flower bud. I'm just going to make a little tiny dome, but sort of on the deeper side. You can use a tool to push this out if your fingers aren't big enough. That's the end of my paintbrush there. Because I want my flower to sit right inside, like it's blooming right out of that green piece. And I'm happy with my shape, so I'm going to add some glue to the inside and use my paintbrush to even that all out because I want this shape to stay, and that is how you do that. And now we're ready to start putting all of our pieces together. My little green flower bud base has dried. I'm going to add some tacky glue because I want this to be put together a little bit more quickly now. Tacky glue right to the inside of the cup, and then I'm going to place my fringed piece right inside, just like that. And you want it to be straight. Sometimes they sort of like to tilt to one side, so we'll get this little guy all straightened out. There we go. And put that aside. I actually already made and dried the cup for the one that's a little bit bigger, excuse me. And there is that one. And now I'm going to add just one more detail. This is an optional part if you want to do this. I want this to look a little bit more like a dandelion flower. So I'm going to be making little triangles out of that same green paper. I do that by cutting a small rectangle. It's just about a ½ inch long. And then using my small scissors, I'm cutting from one corner all the way across to the opposite corner. And that's making these long kind of spiky triangles. These are going to be glued to the bottom of the flower bud cup. And it's going to, if you ever look at a dandelion flower, they have these sort of green spikes, little leafy bits that are coming off of the bottom of their flower buds. So it's just an extra detail just to really drive the dandelion idea home. I found that for this size flower bud, these little ones, I use between 8 and 10 of these little spiky green bits for each of the flower buds. So I'm going to keep snipping those for a few minutes, and then we can put the rest of our flower together. All of my green triangles have been snipped, so now it's time to grab some tacky glue and apply them to the bottom of my flower bud. And to do this, I find it's easy to kind of do the dip method. So I put a little pile of the glue on my wax paper, and I want to glue the wider part of the triangle to the bottom of my flower bud. So I dip a little bit, wipe some off, and then right where it starts to curve from the base is where I'm putting that. You need a very small amount of glue, and you don't want to glue the entire triangle. You just want to glue the very edge because we're going to be kind of folding these back once they dry. And you'll see what I mean later on, but they really do look like little dandelions when that's done. If you have a small pair of quilling tweezers or craft tweezers, that could be really helpful when you're doing the dip method because you won't get glue all over your fingers and you can really place them on there exactly where you want them to be. And then here's a finished one. So I've added the little triangle spikes all the way around. And even from the top there, it already looks like a dandelion. But because we didn't glue the entire triangle, they sort of open up and give a flower bud idea. So my double strip has dried and it's really sturdy now. I like to tear off about 4 inches or so because these are not very big flowers. Sort of soften it between my fingers and it gives a little bit of a curve. And then I'm going to tear off a second small piece, soften that too between my fingers. This one's probably about 1.5 inches long because I'm going to make one stem but have 2 flower buds coming off. So I need another little puddle of tacky glue. This is a side note, off the subject, but tacky glue, there is one version, and unfortunately I picked up the wrong one last time I needed tacky glue. There's one version of tacky glue that has the cap on the bottom side. That's the one I link to when I recommend. That's usually what I use because it's always ready to squeeze. You don't have to wait for it like I just did. But look for that in the description box. I just wanted to mention, don't buy the other kind. It's a pain. So I added a little bit of glue right to the bottom of that second smaller piece of stem. Oops. And just apply it wherever you want that little offshoot to come from your main stem. We're looking for something sort of like that. Just 2 flower buds coming from the same stem. And at this point, you're able to start putting on your flower buds. This is where it gets a little tricky because, like I said before, these flower buds are very heavy. And because of those little spikes and the large diameter, it's kind of tricky to glue the stem on and have it not kind of become off kilter and kind of slanted. I've tried hot glue for this. I don't know if I just was being impatient when I was working with this because I've done it before with success. I wasn't having any luck with hot glue. But what I did have luck with is sort of just kind of standing it up with a little stand here. I used my little jar of quilling tools the first time I did it. But here it is with the tacky glue. Because these flower buds have a nice flat top to them, they stand up nicely on end, and that worked for that part. And then for the other one, I sort of propped the stem up with my scissors underneath to make sure that the stem stayed in the center. Do what you got to do. I'm sure you all will come up with very creative ways to make these glue in the center as well. And then once that's all done, and your stems are glued to your flower buds, you can start opening up your buds however you want. You can leave them kind of narrow, you can really exaggerate them and say that they're fully bloomed and push all that fringe back out. You can manipulate those little spikes so that they're sort of going up and out. You can use your fingers for this, or you can use a quilling tool. Whatever you think is best, you can make them look however you like. I just want to lay these next to the example that I made in the original fringed video. So the only difference is that the original one obviously has 3 flower buds, and I did not include the little green triangle bits to the bottom, but I like that detail a lot. I think that is probably the way to go, even if you don't want to call them dandelions. It just really adds to the overall look and adds a little bit more dimensionality and detail, I think, to these little flower buds. So that's just my take on that part. But anyway, I hope you liked this video. I hope you learned a little bit about a new way to make quilling paper flowers. If you have any questions about this video, leave it in the comment section and I will answer them as soon as I can. As always, I will leave any supplies or links to other videos that you might find interesting. I'll leave that in the description box for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be notified next time I make another quilling video. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.